Hello everyone, welcome to the Ridgefield History Club here at the Ridgefield Historical Society Scott House at 4 Sunset Lane in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Today's date is Tuesday, September 16th, and we're going to be discussing Ridgefield Schoolhouses today. I'm Stephen Bartkus, the director of the Ridgefield Historical Society, and I welcome you to this program, both here in person and for those of you watching on Facebook. We're so excited to have you join us. And I invite you to get more involved here in the Ridgefield Historical Society and the great work that we're doing for the community. Please join us as members and volunteers and participate in the exciting work that we are doing. So Jack Sanders, the former editor of the Ridgefield Press and great Ridgefield historian, is with us today, and he has put together a great slideshow for us, and he is the author of over a dozen books on Ridgefield's history, including the one that you see right there about Ridgefield schoolhouses. So Jack, I would like to hand the program over to you, and if anyone has any questions at any point during the program, feel free to ask, and we could also have a discussion towards the end, and you could share your memories of Ridgefield schoolhouses. Thanks, Jack.
Let's just yell out if you have a question. This is a new form of it. I find that people are surprised when they learn that in the mid-1800s, Ridgefield had at least 14 schoolhouses operating at the same time. 14 schools in a town of a couple of thousand people. And that's because they were neighborhood schools. The town fathers had determined that there were about 14 or 15 sections of town that were qualified as neighborhoods, were big enough so that kids could walk to school. There was no transportation, their parents weren't going to drive them in a horse and buggy to school, they had to walk. And so the districts couldn't be much bigger than a mile or so walk in any direction to the schoolhouse. And these are kids that are 6, 7 years old, they're walking a mile in winter often. So that's why we have so many districts, and I'm going to pass this map around from 1867 that shows the districts 1 through 15, and I often wonder why they went up to 15 when there were only 14 schoolhouses, and I realized that there isn't a 13. Even back then, 13 was an unlucky number apparently, just like there's no 13th floor in a lot of tall buildings. But each one of these districts was a little fiefdom when it came to schools. Each one had its own board of education. Each one board could set the taxes for the operation of the school that people had to pay. They hired the teachers. They set the school year, the school hours. Had an awful lot of control. So it was really a neighborhood operation. And there are good things and there are bad things about that, because people all knew each other and theoretically had common goals. That didn't always happen for the betterment of education, however, and there were some school districts, I can't really point to ones here, but maybe, for instance, Flat Rock might have been a penny pinching school district, but that didn't spend as much money as others on hiring better teachers and maybe supplying some better books. Schools in the 19th century did not supply books. You had to pay for your own books. free books didn't come to Ridgefield until 1912. Free school books. So kids had to buy their own. And usually they were handed down within the family. They didn't change books very much in the schools. We're going to kind of go through the schoolhouses in town. In the order that I've picked is going from the bottom of Ridgefield to South End and work our way north. And actually, in a way, it's appropriate because the schoolhouse in the West Lane School District happens to be a museum now. And it's open every last Sunday of the month from May till October, right? Sally and I have the honor of staffing, mentoring that operation. Quite a few people are amazed when they walk into it. But you see here the West Lane District, and even though it goes up at the north end here, that's West Mountain Road up there. That seems awfully high, but there's nobody up here, really. And if there were somebody there, I think there's one house along the border here, they probably went to West Mountain School. But, so, kids from the Peaceable area, all the way down to, through a bunch of Silver Spring, but not all, and up West Lane in both directions, were the main populace of this schoolhouse. This is a kind of a famous picture because it's the only postcard, commercial postcard that was ever done of a Ridgefield schoolhouse. And it's, and a lot of them were made and a lot of them were sold. It dates from around 1910, maybe a little earlier. I love the horse and buggy there. That may be the photographer who took the picture. That may be his buggy. But notice, I just noticed this the other day, there's a bell in the belfry, and also notice that it's an open belfry. We'll talk about that in a little while later. But in this picture, which is almost the same period, the bell has disappeared. Now this shot is probably from around 1916 or 17, shortly after the schoolhouse closed. It closed in 1915. There was a schoolhouse in this triangle of South Salem Road, West Lane, and Silver Spring Road as early as the 1750s. It didn't look like this. It was smaller. This one dates from the 1850s and was probably jazzed up around 1902. The inside, a lot of the inside finish work and wall work was improved then when the town took over the schools. It happened in a lot of the schoolhouses. This, by the way, might be George Rockwell, the historian, who's having his picture taken. And out back here, you can just see the edge of the old outhouse, one of the old outhouses. But this school, just to show you about penny pinching, did not have an outhouse at all until around 1850. So for its first 75 years, it was operating without an outhouse, and if the kids had to go, they had to go find some woods nearby.
Jazz, did I ever tell you the story about that now? My father told me that my father went to school there. He was the kid that were ringing that bell on Halloween, and it came crashing out of the belfry. And they threw it over the stone wall next to him, and some junk man came along later on and took it. so I went for salvage.
Well, the bell, there is a bell there now,
But that wasn't
that-
the original one.
that's from Vermont, actually, that Doug Martin, who lives across the street from in the old Elizabeth Hall house, he donated it, and James Tobin put it back in
Yeah.
place,
And
and it rings all the time, yes.
I also noticed that in that second picture of, it has a flagstaff on the front of the house, which it still has one, which is falling apart, but the previous picture to that did not have it.
Oh, very good.
Was that
So,
the flagpole?
well,
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, those are,
Those goes all
electric
the way
ones?
down. I think so.
they look like electric.
These are utility poles.
Yeah. Yeah, so it, in that time frame, we've also,
Now, sometimes they touch up pictures to remove things that they didn't want in the image. Now, it's possible they took that off.
even in those days, they
This-
could-
So that might indicate that this is even earlier than 1910, it could be 1905.
I noticed it says West Lane on it too, the peak of the entry roof,
yeah.
Mm.
yeah.
Yes, that was not common among the schoolhouses. This looks like it's disappeared. It looks like there's something tacked up here, like you notice that maybe it's for sale or something, but the garden club took it over, and as we'll see, they fixed it up. This is just an old picture that I think dates from the 1890s, but it's just so, even though it's in poor condition, it's just amazing that the outfits of the little kids. You'll notice that there's actually there's a boy over here who's got a tie and a white shirt on. Other kids,
What school was that?
this is West Lane. We're still on West Lane. So, I think 1890s, judging from the clothing and the style of the picture. But this is the one, we know the date of this one is 1904, and Mr. Mullen can tell us all about the little drama that's taking place in.
Yeah, my father went to Westland Schoolhouses, so
Is that your father there?
I believe so.
Yes.
And you notice the girl in front is distressed and crying. But that, I believe, was my Aunt Margaret, my father's sister. And the reason that she is upset is because my father was in the picture with a button missing off his coat, and if you see it on the bottom there, it's
See,
that was a terrible thing to do.
she was so embarrassed.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I think being from an Irish immigrants in this town, they were very conscious of, their looks and wanting to be proper.
What are the age ranges?
In a schoolhouse, you could have anything from 4 to 16 years old. And they were all taught by one teacher, could have 30, 35 kids. One teacher ages the kids of 4 to 16, the teacher could be 18. The typical teacher had no more than what we would call an 8th grade education. So there had to be a lot of cooperation, teamwork, and discipline in these schoolhouses to get kids of all these different ages and probably behaviors and certainly abilities to work in the same little crowded area for 6 to 7 hours a day. It's pretty amazing that these things worked, and they did.
Jack,
Yes.
since there was no Board of Education back then, did each school work independently?
That's what I was saying.
The teacher did her own
No,
thing?
I said
or-
each school,
Has
each
its-
district has a Board of Education.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't hear.
Each school district in town, 14 school districts, each one had a Board of Education that could set taxes, hire teachers, fire teachers, set the school year, length of the day, all kinds of things. It's basically the same thing the modern Board of Education does. And that lasted until 1902, when the town finally just took over all the schoolhouses, because there really was quite a bit of difference in the quality of each, depending on those different school boards that were school committees, they were called. This is the inside of West Lane today. As I said, is a museum. This was all fixed up by the Ridgefield Garden Club. It's got many of these wonderful posters that were done by Tom Warren, who was the son of
Donna Warren and Carl Warren.
have been active in historical things as well as garden club things.
Well, Donna and Carl pretty much took charge of the schoolhouse for a period of time.
Yeah. And these seats were the kind of seats that were in use in 1915 when the schoolhouse closed. They actually came from the Danbury school system, but that's what were
They're not the,
in use.
they're not the original.
No.
No.
There's, and the stove that's up in front is not original either. It's designed to show the kind of thing that would have heated it. Actually, it probably was more toward the middle of the room to spread the heat around, and the pipe would, the long pipe going to the chimney at the end would have helped heat the place. But we could get anywhere from 15 to 30 or sometimes 40 people visit on a Sunday afternoon when the schoolhouse is open.
There was a story about, I don't know where I heard it, but I don't know if it came from there, that the people who bought the wood, their kids could sit closer to the stove. Did you ever hear that?
But everyone contributed wood because they got a tax deduction for doing that. And the amount of the deduction depended on the quality of the wood. If you brought in good oak, for instance, it was worth a lot more than if you brought in pine, because it burned longer and was a better fireplace wood. Despite the shortcomings of these schoolhouses, and this guy, Samuel Goodrich, who is better known as Peter Parley, thought the education he got at West Lane was not the best, and he's one of a couple of critics of the quality of the teachers he had there. And yet he went on to do great things. He wrote more than 100 books, many of them aimed at children and used in the schools in the first half of the 18th century. Pardon my little alerts there. The transfer station update just came on. But his brother, Charles, who also went to this school, wrote 20 books of history. Some dealt with religion, some were travel logs. But this book here, The History of the United States, was used in American public schools for 30 or 40 years. His name is Charles Goodrich. The sister of these two, Abigail Goodrich Whittlesey, was one of America's first women magazine editors and later magazine publisher. And that's a cover of Mrs. Whittlesey's magazine for mothers and daughters. That's an 1852-53 issue, that cover. And this is the contents page, and shows some of the articles like Mothers of the Bible, Mary. The Consecrated Child, The Mother's Evening Hour, A Chapter from Real Life, Letter to a Bereaved Mother. A lot of articles like that. And it was pretty popular. It lasted as long as she could manage to put it out. Her husband, who was a minister, helped in the, he was in charge of production, I think. Also a graduate alumnus of West Lane Schoolhouse is Cyrus Northrup. This is a picture of Cyrus as a Yalie. Cyrus grew up on West Lane and went to that school, which he considered a little better than a shack, he called it. At the age of 15, was teaching at the center school in Ridgefield. 15. His family, these are farming Northrups. Cyrus Northrup's family saved up enough money to send him to Yale, to first a private high school, prep school, and then to Yale, where he, after a stint as a newspaper editor, he became a professor, and he was hired from Yale by the University of Minnesota to be its president. And in 25 years as president, he turned a campus that had 2 buildings into several campuses that had more than 25 buildings, and became a major American university. Not bad for a little West Lane schoolhouse. Next to it is Flat Rock. The schoolhouse, this is Wilton Road West coming down here. It's the route of Wilton Road West has changed a lot over the years since 1867 when this map was done. But you can see where the schoolhouse is. It's just below Woodchuck Lane. That area is, the state has been using lately to dump stuff and park vehicles, and but for many years, after the state straightened Route 33, that was the Twin Maples rest area. Back in the days when the state had picnic areas all over along roads, that was one of the ones in Ridgefield that had a couple of picnic tables and a trash can, so that tourists in the 20s and 30s and 40s could stop and have their lunch. But this is the Flat Rock Schoolhouse, which I think is one of the bleaker looking schoolhouses and scenes. This was actually, the original of this picture was blue. It was a cyano type photo that was popular in the 1880s, 1890s with amateur photographers because it was very easy to process the film or make prints. But I changed it into black and white because it was just too weird looking at something that was all shades of blue. But that's the same process that was used to make blueprints for many years.
So did they basically use just sunlight for the light inside, and then I guess candles for the kids to be able to see what they're writing or whatever, or or do they
You're
have?
talking about the
kerosene
school
light?
kids inside?
Yeah.
Inside, the schoolhouse.
They have windows, they didn't
Yeah.
use candles.
They didn't.
Candles are expensive, and they went to school in the daytime.
I understand that. I was just wondering if those few.
Well, you'll
Windows.
see that later on,
Yeah, you see it over there?
they improved the windows on these schoolhouses because they weren't letting in enough light.
Right.
But that created other problems, but we don't wanna get into
Okay.
that. But I thought that it would be interesting to see what this picture would look like colorized. And
Nice.
it looks a little nicer, but it's still a pretty bleak scene. I don't think I would have liked going to Flat Rock School.
But it does have an outhouse, so.
Well, now, that's the question. I'm not sure about that.
Oh.
Whether that's the outhouse or the woodhouse. Could be either.
Could be out
Um,
of luck.
Here's a closer view
Could
of
be a
it.
combo.
Let it be an outhouse.
Let it be an outhouse.
Oh,
You notice the log there holding
open
it
it
up.
up.
Oh,
Look at
my.
Most of these pictures that you see with kids in it, and this was not a really formal shot, this was, I think, a group off on a lark, family. You don't see kids smile. Very rare in a picture with a schoolhouse. Both of these kids look like they just set fire to the outhouse, or something. They're troublemakers,
maybe
This-
that's why the branch is holding it up.
Maybe they were gonna take it down. But this schoolhouse closed, this is one of the schoolhouses, like West Lane, that closed when the big center school opened, the Benjamin Franklin Elementary School. We'll talk about that a little later. It closed in 1915 also. But before it closed, around 1902, it got a makeover by the town. The town took over it and it became a much more fetching looking school. It had its own bell tower and entryway and everything. But after it closed, it was sold and moved off the property. And I've been trying to figure out where it went. And the best candidate I've found is on St. John's Road. This house is on Lower St. John's Road. It was part of Dr. Van Etten's big estate farm there called Hillscroft. I think it was used for pigs or some kind of animals. It's now a house. It's a little tiny house. But the assessor dates it at 1930, which is the same time that the school was sold. The rumors, the hand-me-down information about this place is that it was once a schoolhouse, so maybe that's the old,
I just thought it was.
is that right?
Yeah, that's what the owner said.
This is also one of the schoolhouses for which we have the records of the school board, the school committee. And they start in 1836 and go up to 1902 when the town took over the operation. And it's very interesting, the kinds of things that go on in there. And I transcribed a lot of this so that it would be useful for research in the future. One of the teachers, it's not many schoolhouses that get to have a future governor as teacher, but when he was 17, Governor George Lounsbury was an instructor there. There was a schoolhouse on Lower Main Street that we have no pictures of. But we do have this 1856 map showing the schoolhouse. This is Rockwell Road, West Lane, this is where the fountain is. The congregation, this is before the Congregational Church, this is 1856, so this is when the big shop was at the corner of West Lane and Main Street. The schoolhouse was called the Bell District Schoolhouse because at the time it was one of the few schools that had a bell in its belfry. But unfortunately, the school was fired by an incendiary. In other words, it was torched by arsonists. in Ridgefield the night of the 30th, and that was in 1860. No insurance. There have always been fights about whether there should be a Bell District at all, and there wasn't enough support for resurrecting the schoolhouse. So the district was absorbed by Whipstick, Flat Rock, West Lane in the center. So it disappeared, which is one reason why we have no pictures. Whipstick was at the corner of Whipstick Road and Nod Hill, Nod Road, not Nod Hill, Whipstick and Nod. It moved around, it was in several different places, but this is one of the last versions of the schoolhouse. You notice it has two front doors. This was kind of 1860s woke, where big shot educators in state and colleges were telling towns they should have two front entrances, one for boys and one for girls, because it somehow gave each more self-respect and privacy. They're sitting around in this little tiny one room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much bigger than what we're in right now, this room. And they have to have two doors. A lot of people didn't go with it, and because it's twice as leaky, the air leaking in the winter, harder to heat. Just more work to make two doorways than one. But this schoolhouse had one. This became a wing of a house, a little cottage on the north intersection of Whipstick and Nod. And during the entire 1930s, it was occupied by an artist named Charles Sheeler. Sheeler was, and still is, one of the top, best-known 20th century modern artists. He was also a photographer, and his art, this is an example of it, which typically involved images of industry. His art was somewhat photographic in nature, and he was also a photographer, and he hung out with photographers. This portrait of him, Charles Sheeler, was taken by Alfred Eisenstadt, who was a well-known photographer in the 20th century, and Sheeler used to hang around with Edward Steichen, a photographer who retired in Reading. Sheeler is well enough known that there have been at least 2 postage stamps with his art on them, but not something that the average person would want hanging in their living room, maybe, but you can make an industrial scene look colorful. Unfortunately, the house where many of these paintings were created, where he lived for a decade, was torn down in 2001 to make way for a McMansion. This is in 1867, the St. Beers map that we passed around. It doesn't say there's a schoolhouse here on Old Branchville Road. This is Branchville Road, this is Old Branchville Road. There is a dock here. That may be it, but for some reason or other it doesn't say a schoolhouse. But this 1856 Clark map does show a schoolhouse there. So we know there was a schoolhouse on Old Branchville Road at least by 1856. You'll notice that the district was called Ridgefield Station. That's because there was no branch line yet in 1867. That would happen 3 years later, and then it would be called Branchville. But this district, when it was created in about 1784, was what is called a half district. So, which meant that it shared its territory with another town. And excuse me, I don't know whether the other town is Wilton down here or Reading over here, but so there is a schoolhouse right here in Wilton where Carluzzi's is now. There's a schoolhouse. There was a schoolhouse up here. What do we call that? It's not
Little Boston?
Little Boston area of Reading. I don't know whether kids from probably I'd say kids from here would have gone down there. Kids from the top part of the district may have gone up to Florida, which is up there. But anyway, there was probably no schoolhouse until the 1840s or so in Branchville.
Before you go, if you go back to that, I see the name Iron Ore. Is that a person's name or family, or is that
They had a mine there.
there was a mine? Okay.
There was iron was mined all over,
Okay.
small ones.
What's that Indian name, Warrants? Is he a chief or something? Warrants Rock.
Chicken War-Ups. He was
Yeah.
one of the,
That shouldn't be in here.
War-Ups Rock? Up
It's up on in Great-
Peaceable, is that?
Is that a well-known Reading?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What was he, a chief?
yeah.
Yeah. Chicken Rock named after him?
Great Pond.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a Branchville schoolhouse around 1910. This design followed a pattern that the state issued in the 1860s, saying that it has big windows to let in more light, it has lights over the door. It has this, which is part of a ventilation system. And like most of the schoolhouses with bells that you'll see, it has these louvers on it that I believe serve a couple of purposes. One is part of the ventilation system. Two is there's a rope going down into this schoolhouse to ring that bell. So there's a hole in the roof. So you've got to have some kind of protection from the rain. At the same time, the bell's got to be heard. So you have these reverse louvers. But this was a very typical schoolhouse in its era, which is about 1870 it was built.
The American Legion building, which I'm sure was a schoolhouse, has the bell
Come
with
to
the,
that.
right,
That's coming down the road.
yeah, okay.
This is when the JCs used it. For many years, the Ridgeville Civic Association used it. The school closed in 1939. It was one of the last two one-room schoolhouses to close. See this tree here? Here's a more modern. That tree disappeared. Last week it was.
Wow. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, the Historical Society has signed a 25-year lease with the town of Ridgefield. The town owns this property, and we are working to restore the schoolhouse and turn it into a community meeting and exhibition space. So we hope to have that completed in the next year or two, and we'll be able to use the building for many activities and maybe have some history club programs there.
Nice.
I
Okay, we're gonna move up a little to Florida. This is Florida Hill Road. This is Florida Road, so it's right at the intersection. It's kind of in the core of the population. It also took kids from Reading, this is the Reading line here, in this area here, went to the Florida school. The unusual thing about the Florida school is that it was made of brick. It was the only schoolhouse in the 20th century that was brick in Ridgefield. There had been a version of the whipstick school that was brick in the 1800s, but they abandoned it and built a new one. I don't know why. I love the fact that they have their name in big letters, very neatly painted on the front. And then you see
They painted over it.
and they just painted right over it.
Yeah.
This is, I don't know why there are two adult women here.
Yeah.
They look like sisters,
Yeah.
but at least one of them was a teacher. So this is another view, but look at this thing here. This is the bell tower. What's that? This is a ventilation tower. There's a chimney back there, we'll see over here. That helped ventilate. And that's something you needed in this school because it was brick. The other schoolhouses were clapboard and they were not insulated. So when the wind blew in the winter, they were cold and drafty and unpleasant, but they were well ventilated. You wouldn't have to worry about the quality of the air with 35 kids all jammed together. But with the brick, it's sealed, except for, I guess the windows were probably well sealed too. So they needed the extra ventilation. Some of the graduates of Florida, including George Lounsbury, who spent some time there, became governor. Frederick Fairweather, who became a teacher here at one-room schoolhouse for a while, then went to work for Tiffany and became one of the leading designers for the Tiffany Company, did many, many church windows around the country. This is Henry Beers, who became a multi-millionaire back in the days, in the 1800s, wildcatting oil in western Pennsylvania and also investing in real estate in New York, including much of what later became Grand Central Terminal here in the land. Farmingville School. You notice that the Farmingville School is shown on the north side of Farmingville Road. This is Farmingville Road here. Lounsbury Road, Route 7. This is shown on the north side. But today that site would be on the south side because Farmingville Road has been straightened to go approximately like this. So the schoolhouse would be there, and this is about where the Farmingville School is, the modern school. This is what the schoolhouse looked like in at least the last half of the 1800s. Probably this dates from 1830s, 1820s. But we're fortunate enough to actually have a painting that was done by a teacher here named Delia St. John in October 1897. That's probably a better image of what the schoolhouse looked like. But it was replaced a few years later by actually by this man here, Governor George Lounsbury. This is George and this is Phineas. Both of them went to that little red schoolhouse. They're both graduates of that. But George donated this schoolhouse just after the beginning of the 20th century. And it was used until around 1925, 26, when there were just too few children to make it worthwhile, and they were absorbed into the center school. But this shot shows you, it's one of the few where you see a nice outhouse picture. This is not only a woodshed, but it could be a place to keep a horse. Some kids who were a little better off probably could ride a horse to school. And there are reports that some families allowed that.
Jeff, on several of the schools, see the thing in the lower right corner next to the man? It's like an announcement board?
Yes, this is where public announcements dealing with the school
Like
system.
Branchville has one.
Yeah, they all they would announce meetings of the school board, or the school year when it was gonna start, public notice boards. And I think they probably also had some general town notices, could be posted there. That's a good point. This schoolhouse was moved to North Salem, up on Titticus Mountain. And there it sits today, looking almost exactly the way it did when it was in Ridgefield a century earlier. And here's a drone view of the schoolhouse as it sits behind it. It's been used as a studio for a photographer, a couple of photographers, and as a dance studio, and now I think it's been turned into a guest cottage. Center School. We have no pictures of the early center schools. They started out around 1740, 1730 on the village green, which is in front of Jesse Lee. There was a school on the Lounsbury property. There was a school kind of in the middle of the intersection of Katuna and Maine. But this one, in 1867, the Center District, was where the firehouse is now. But in 1882, Phineas Lounsbury, brother of George who gave the Farringville School, gave land on Bailey Avenue and a considerable amount of the building cost for the new center school, which was a 2-story, 4-room building that would see a lot of use in the coming years.
I went to school there. Kindergarten.
It was a,
This
this is how many kids, this is 143 kids in this picture, were in that building, around 1905, 1910. It was a very, very busy schoolhouse, very crowded, and they had to use some space in the town hall because there were so many kids in there. That's where the town's first kindergarten operations, when it became semi-public, were housed. And this picture shows kind of the mother of kindergarten. She wasn't the founder of it, but she was the person that really led early childhood education in Ridgefield for many, many years. Mabel Cleves, Cleves Auditorium at Veterans Park School is named for her. She was a short woman, almost not much bigger than the kids that she was teaching. But this is her kindergarten in that schoolhouse that we just saw. Here's a picture of her and two of her pupils. And here's one of my favorite pictures of kindergartners. That's from the World War I era, and these are, each one of these kids is holding a flag from Allied members of the Allied nations.
They identified the kids?
Yeah.
I
the kids
don't
are?
think we have IDs for those.
I think one of them is supposed to be Tabby Carbone.
Who?
Tabby Carbone.
It's a great picture.
Yeah.
Joseph Hartman. And here's the center school became Alexander Hamilton High School for a while. Then it became the garden school where you went, which was for kindergarten, and they actually had pre-K there for a while. And kindergarten, and for a while, first grade was in there too, I think. But it was torn down in 1955 to make way for the Bailey Avenue parking lot.
Yeah.
And the kids went to Veterans Park. Also part of the center of town is Titicus District. And you can see that it is not a very big in size because it has so many people in it. Here's a close-up of the Titicus area. This is, again, 1867. This is when there was talk of there being a railroad coming to a station here. That never happened. This is what the schoolhouse looked like. This is when it had 2 rooms. It started out as a 1-room schoolhouse, they added another, and in the 1920s they added a 3rd room. So it was actually a 3-room schoolhouse at one point. And it didn't close. It closed when the center school opened, but it almost, the next year, they had to reopen it because they had just too many kids. And they couldn't fit them all in the Benjamin Franklin School in the center. So they had to reopen this, and eventually they had to add another room to handle everybody. But throughout its years, it had outdoor facilities. It never had indoor plumbing.
What school is that?
Titicus.
Titicus.
This is a picture from around 1922 or 23, and we're going to zoom in on the teacher, and you see that's Dick Venus. He's a young boy. But look at this girl. You all see what she's doing?
Yeah.
She's sticking her tongue out. You see a lot of weird things in these pictures. You know, very, very rarely do you see a smile, but Dick Venus is kind of cracking a smile. He must have been teacher's pet. This is Larry Leary. Larry Leary, older, not the one down.
Yeah, my uncle.
Aileen's father's in there too.
Right, he's in the front.
So that's the full picture.
That's the Titicus School.
Which one's your
He's
father?
4th on the bottom with the curly hair. Keep going over, go over. One up there.
Oh, yeah, he looks like your
Yeah,
kids.
real curly hair.
None of them look very happy. Oh,
Is this the American
look at these
Legion
gloves
building?
on.
Jack, did you hear Phil tell a story about he went to school there, my brother went to school there too. The day the teacher got locked in the outhouse,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he said,
Dick Venus does that.
Phil told him a lot, it's one of his favorite.
He was.
He was sent uptown, I think Doug Lane, he didn't get a spare key to get the poor woman, it was Miss Nichols. And they walked up, and of course, at the top of the hill, they had to stop at Joe's store to get a soda. And then they went up, continued, went to queue, and pulled them back, they had to stop again. In the meantime, this poor woman was still in the outhouse. And they finally got back to her and got her out. But one of the kids must have just put a padlock on it. She was in at recess or something and that locked her in.
At least they didn't tip it over. This is the schoolhouse in 1939, the last year it was in operation. And this is the schoolhouse today. Pete, you were gonna say something about the,
Just that they still have a working bell.
and
Yeah.
the rope there is?
Yeah, yeah.
And do they ever ring, they ring it for Memorial Day, or?
I'm sure they do that, and our Ridgefield Old Timers meets there once a month,
No.
and we jokingly will ring it when we're leaving.
My brother went to school there, he lived over in that park.
Okay, West Mountain. West Mountain School was located on what is now a private drive. This is, the state built a straightaway here in the 1920s or 30s, so that the schoolhouse, actually the schoolhouse is more like up here. Is now on private property, on a private road. But it was closed in 1929. This is the only view that I have of that schoolhouse. Again, a lot of happy faces there, including that teacher who looks like a pain in the butt. I wouldn't want him as a teacher, I don't think. But that's I'm told his name is, he's one of the Regans.
Jeremiah, right?
Yeah. We can't place him though, how he exactly fits into the Regan family.
I like the boy on the other side too, instead of.
Yeah.
He became a teacher later.
Another clock there.
But here's what the schoolhouse looks like today. It's a house, but it has, since it closed in 1929, been a laundry for an estate that's, it was Dr. Nelligan's estate most recently, called Industry. It was a kennel. It served a number of different purposes, but has since been turned into a house. Been added to, obviously, because that's much longer than a schoolhouse would be. Scott's Ridge, or Scotland. The early schoolhouses were down this way, apparently. This is 1867. This is Farrar Lane. This is North Salem Road. So it was opposite Farrar Lane, a little north of it, on North Salem Road. And this is what it looked like. That is an etching of some sort. It's some complicated process that involves wax and everything, but done by Silvio Bedini. And it's just a real work of art, I think. He used it in his Ridgefield and Review history in 1958, but he apparently knew that building as a youth, and he did this wonderful etching. It's the only view we have of that schoolhouse that probably dates from, well, late 1700s, because later on, the schoolhouse moved up to Mananasco. This is North Salem Road this way, here, like that. This is the Cora Trail. So this is at the corner. This is where the St. Pius X Religious Center, Retreat Center, and all that is. So that's where the schoolhouse was. This is a couple of views of what it looked like. A nice schoolhouse. Nice pictures. And these pictures, by the way, you'll find a few kids smiling. It's almost like this kid is really smiling. And you see some other ones that looks like they're about to burst out. They're holding back their laugh. Somebody must have cracked a joke.
You know, I wonder if they weren't told before they had their picture taken. Now, I don't want any horsing around, this is
They're
important.
told not to smile.
Right, yeah.
Because it's difficult to hold a smile.
Mhm.
It is not difficult to just.
And how long did they have to stand
This
there?
school was moved across North Salem Road to what this calls the almshouse, but was the town farm. That is the old Hiram K. Scott place.
It's Circle Drive.
Yeah, Circle Drive is over in here, yeah. Yeah, that's all Circle Drive. When the almshouse, the town farm, was sold around 1944 to help the town sold the poorhouse so it could buy the Lounsbury mansion. It's like a little irony there, I think.
Yeah.
But it helped pay for what is now, the Lounsbury House and Community Center. When that happened, the people who bought the house, the antique house there, wanted to get rid of the schoolhouse. And Doug Main, who went to that school, and lived way down south on North Salem Road, just a little bit north of the south end of Dakota Trail. He moved it down to his property and turned it into a house. And it's still there today. This is what it looks like. This is another view of it. And you'll see over here, this thing, that's the bell from the schoolhouse. I don't know why, I guess they took it out so they could ring it. They didn't want to ring it when the renters were using it. Limestone. We have two schoolhouses there within the 20th century, probably. The first was the older location, the blue arrow, was over toward the real center of the old limestone district. That's where the mills were, and that's where there was some stores. There was a post office in Limestone for a while. So it was right at the corner of Haviland and Still Road, that little spot there. And this is what it looked like. It was another two-door schoolhouse with a huge flagpole. I mean, that's a towering, I'm assuming that's a flagpole. Maybe that's a utility pole. But this school, for some reason or other, the location was changed to Danbury Road. This is Danbury Road here, Haviland, Limestone, Gray Hill. And here's what it looked like. It's unusual, and then it's built on a tough piece of land. It's going downhill, so you've got this big gap for a cellar. You have to climb these stairs to get into the front door. It's different. It's certainly a different design. Here's another view of it. Somebody else must have been taking a picture because all these kids and the teacher are looking over this way. I like the kids sitting up here.
How long did it take from the beginning when they say, okay, you start the picture and finish the picture?
This picture would have been fairly quick. It's just,
Okay.
there's sunshine there. there's a lot of light.
Okay.
And this is 1910,
Yeah.
so you had Brownie cameras by 1910.
But you were talking about before, the teacher would tell the kids not to smile because it's harder to keep a smile.
That's a leftover from the older times and indoor photography as well.
Okay.
They didn't really have to.
Okay.
This is what it looks like, this is what it looked like in 1970, the schoolhouse, which is now a house. It's right north of the limestone service station. And this is what it looks like today. The red shutters. As you can see, there's that, they use it for the garage.
What about south of that little house that sits on the corner?
I don't know what that is.
You know,
I don't know what that is.
the roof of it was an old school.
It wouldn't have been involved in that. Bennett's Farm School was located in the middle of the Ridgefield Lakes area, Bennett's and Bates Farm Road. We don't have any really good pictures of it. This is a drawing by Margaret Malval, painting. And this is a black and white version of what she probably painted in film. And it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't look like a schoolhouse. But I don't know what she based it on or anything. But I did myself take a picture of it while it was still existing. This is in 1970, and it was falling apart. You can see gaps in the roof through this window. These are not windows or anything. This is just
Studs.
clapboarding that's gone. There's no insulation in there. It was purchased by some guy who moved to Florida and just left it there. And, it collapsed. It finally had to be taken down as a safety problem. And it's too bad. It's said to be one of the oldest schoolhouses in town. It may have dated from the late 1700s. There was certainly a schoolhouse in Bennett's Farm by 1742. We know that there were schoolhouses there. South Ridgebury was originally in the peak of this meeting of Ridgebury Road and Old Stagecoach Road, right at the very top there. But it was moved to this spot here on the other side of Old Stagecoach Road, where it spent its last years. That's now, today, this is the site of the house that's there in this map. Samuel Cole's house that became Daniel McKeon's house. They moved that house to there, and restored it, and then they built a new house. The Hunter Harrison, the railroad executive. They built a new house here that looks like the old McKeon house. But anyway, so this is a view of about 1925 of how many kids were actually going to that school. Not a lot. And here's a picture from 1928, September. That's the last school year this school was open. September of 1928-29 was its last school year. It was taken by Anna Klaus, who was born on Danbury Road. Her father was a fireman on the engine that ran the train from Ridgefield to Branchville. It was a fireman, a railroad fireman. This was her car. She was 20 years old She graduated from Danbury Normal School, which is now Westcon, got herself a car. She was very proud of that. And she pictured it prominently in this picture with the last students to attend that school. Dan McKeon, when he bought this whole area here, moved the schoolhouse across the street, up on a high hill, where it's just today. It's still there, but it's threatened because there has just been advertised the fact that this property is available with a new $3 million house on it, yet to be built. So, what's going to happen to this? Is this schoolhouse can it be saved? Could it possibly be moved right across the street where the town has 43 acres of the old McKeon farm? This was part of the McKeon farm at one time, so it's appropriate that it would go onto the McKeon farm property. It could be a nature center. It could be a community center in Ridgebury, but it could be a museum to farming. Pete has created a mini museum to farming already on the McKeon property, the old McKeon farm property, which is very cool. And if you had an indoor facility, you could
That would be,
have
that
some
would be nice.
pretty neat stuff in there, including posters and.
Yeah.
But so we're hoping that the town officials will get in touch with the builder, who's a Danbury guy, and has built a lot of houses in Ridgefield, and see if something can be worked out. Maybe the guy will pay to have it moved. Is good PR for him. Maybe not. Here's a mystery district. District number 15. This is the 1867 map. It shows the district, but it doesn't show any schoolhouse. So we're guessing that the kids from here went to, this is Myrie Brook School District, which is not too far away. However, and that's probably true of these kids, they probably went to Myrie Brook, because there's no, I would have thought that these two would have been combined into a district, but there's no sign of a schoolhouse up here either. But in 1872, the people in that district bought a piece of property here and built a school. So the North Ridgebury School operated there from about 1873 until a little before 1910. This is right opposite the road, Old Ridgebury Road, I think they call this. This is Shadow Lake. This is where it curves off, and this is the Turner Hill development there.
Where's the church down?
What's that?
The church.
The church is down here. The Congregational Church. Here's the Ridgebury Cemetery. So there was a schoolhouse up there. We have no pictures of it. And one last school district that I mentioned, because it's very unusual, but it wasn't around in 1850. All this area here, this is Ridgefield now. This is all Danbury now, but it was Ridgefield back before 1846. So Mill Plain, most of Mill Plain was in Ridgefield. And the Mill Plain School, which was right there, was in Ridgefield and was part of the overall governing, Ridgefield was in control of it. This is a line I put in there to approximate the Ridgefield town line. Here's a close-up of the Mill Plain Village. There's the school. This is Mill Plain Road, Route 202, used to be Route 6, before I-84. This is about where Rosie Tomorrow's is. So these roads all exist. There are little houses and little businesses down in there, that little community. This is before the train line came through like that. A few years after this, same road here.
Yeah.
This is the old Mill Plain Road. Here's about where, this is about where the schoolhouse is. I at first thought this was maybe part of the foundation, but now I think it's just this stone wall that's in front of the schoolhouse. So, the schoolhouse is up in here somewhere. A blank site. Now, back to Ridgefield. The reason all these schoolhouses closed was consolidation. It was more efficient to have all your grades and your grammar school grades in one building. So this building was built in 1915, Benjamin Franklin Grammar School, they called it. They also eventually called it the Center School, when they renamed the school down on Bailey Avenue. This held the kids from West Lane, Whipstick, Flat Rock, at first Hitticus, and the Center District when it opened. And it kept on picking up more as schools closed. Some of the schools closed in 1925 and their kids were absorbed. It got a little bigger. In around 1926, this was the high school edition. So the high school had been down on Bailey Avenue in the old Center School building. From 1915 to 1926, that was the Alexander Hamilton High School. So when the high school moved up into this nice new wing here, the younger kids from this school were sent down to what was called the Garden School on Bailey Avenue. It was pre-K, K, first and maybe second grade, I think. Can't remember. But this is what the school looked like in the 20s. In the 30s, it kept getting bigger as more of the outlying elementary school schools closed. And this is the 60s. So there are probably people here. When you went there, was first grade there?
I went through 12 years.
So you went to 12 years in this building.
Started on the left-hand lower
Yeah.
side, and then worked your way all the way through that.
That was a really consolidated school.
Came
Yeah.
out,
It had everything.
12th grade in the upper right.
Yeah.
Worked your way through that whole building.
Yeah.
Elementary school even had their own cafeteria.
It's
It's right now.
but since then, since the opening of Veterans Park, Ridgefield has gone back to the concept of neighborhood schools,
Yeah.
so to speak. I mean, they're not like neighborhood schools where you can walk within a mile, but they're Branchville, Farmingville, Scotland, Ridgebury, Barlow Mountain, Scotland and Barlow Mountain on the same site. And Veterans Park is our summer school.
That 1 mile thing, that was even in effect when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
couldn't, if you lived 1 mile from the school, you couldn't have a bus, you had to walk.
And if you went to high school, it was 1.5 miles.
Most of the way and a half, yeah. So I lived over in Mountain View and I had to walk. Yeah, to the house.
I just wanted to put a plug in for the Branchville Schoolhouse Restoration Project. If you're interested in helping at all, there's a Ridgefield Historical Society.org website has a page about it and an application that you can fill out to express your interest. Your interest may be money, but it may be in volunteering to help in some way. Because the schoolhouses in this town have produced some amazing people and accomplished some amazing things, and it's nice to hold on to them so that we have these pieces of the past to let kids know in the future how things work. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you so much, Jack. Does anyone have any additional questions for Jack or any comments that you'd like to share? Okay, well, Jack, thanks. That was wonderful. Thanks for bringing us through Ridgefield's educational history. It's amazing, all these one-room schoolhouses that were located here in town, and we're so happy here at the Historical Society to be working hard to preserve the Branchville Schoolhouse. And thank you for everyone who's contributed so far to that project, and we hope that more people will get involved. I also wanted to mention Veterans Park School. You may have seen the recent article that the Ridgefield Historical Society is working with Ridgefield Public Schools to preserve the very important auditorium there. So Veterans Park School was built in 1955 and was designed by a very prominent modernist architect named Willis Mills. And if you've ever been inside the school before and have taken a look at the auditorium, you could see the incredible mahogany woodwork, paneling, and chairs. And it's a really significant building and auditorium. It is in rough conditions, so some of the chairs need to be restored and replaced. So we're providing guidance to Ridgefield Public Schools on the best way to do that. And we're really excited that U.S. Modernist picked up this story. This is a national group that pays attention to modernism in America, so they're also very excited about the restoration of Veterans Park School auditorium. So keep in touch with us, and we'll keep you informed about how that project is moving forward. And I also wanted to briefly mention a few of our upcoming programs. So this Thursday, September 18th, we're having a great presentation over at St. Stephen's Church North Hall. It's called Remembering Lists, Enslavement and Espionage During the Revolutionary War. It starts at 6:30 p.m. The author Claire Belageau is coming from Long Island to speak with us and to share the story about Elizabeth, who was an enslaved lady owned by Robert Townsend, who was part of the Culper spy ring during the American Revolution. So this 1-hour presentation is going to be very interesting. So please join us on Thursday, September 18th at 6:30 at St. Stephen's Church. And this Saturday, September 20th, right here at the Scott House, we're going to have Battlefield Archaeology Day. This takes place from 2 to 5 p.m. The archaeologists in our Battle of Ridgefield Archaeology Project will be here demonstrating their equipment, ground-penetrating radar, metal detecting, and this is a great opportunity for young, aspiring archaeologists and historians to meet the archaeologists and to actually participate. We're going to be doing some excavating here in the yard at the Scott House, and students will be able to practice with the metal detectors that the archaeologists are bringing and see what they might be able to find here in our yards. We'll also have artifacts that they've been finding through the archaeology project this summer on display here inside the Scott House, and they'll be giving everyone the latest update and explaining everything that they found. So this is a drop-in program from 2 to 5 p.m. this Saturday, so we look forward to seeing you all there. And also on Sunday, October 12th, Jack is going to be talking about his book, Here Lies Ye Body, at Lounsbury House, and Ira Joe Fisher is going to be interviewing him, and we're going to be hearing about some of the notable people that are buried in Ridgefield cemeteries, and Jack's going to follow that up with a walking tour at the Maple Shade Cemetery on Monday, October 13th, where you'll be able to actually see the locations of some of these burials and hear about the stories of these interesting people who lived here in Ridgefield. So there's a lot coming up. I hope you'll be able to join us during the fall season, and come back also for the next History Club program, Tuesday, October 21st at 10 o'clock. We have a very special topic, which I will be announcing shortly. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you.